Hi there, this is Bill Loguidice of Armchair Arcade. Today, I'll be taking a look at the Atari Flashback 4 classic game console from AtGames. As a bonus, I'll also be taking a look at new versions of the classic style Atari paddles and joysticks, which will both be available around the same time as the Flashback 4, and work both with that system as well as all the usual classic video game and computer systems. First, I'd like to take a quick moment to recap the previous Atari Flashbacks. The first Atari Flashback was a dreadful NES on a chip that simulated Atari 2600 and 7800 games badly. The Atari Flashback 2 was an extremely accurate hardware reproduction of the workings of a real Atari 2600. In fact, some handy users have hacked cartridge ports on the system. The Atari Flashback 2 Plus was a limited release minor update of the 2, with the latest revision of the Atari 2600 on a chip hardware that changed up the game lineup. The Atari Flashback 3, which I covered in a previous video, ditched the hardware accurate recreation of the Atari 2600 hardware for less accurate but still reasonably effective emulation. So no more cartridge port hacks. The recreations of the Atari 2600 joysticks also had more play, meaning they were looser than the originals, but they worked really well and are arguably better for hands now used to modern controllers. The biggest selling point of the Flashback 3, besides the two backwards compatible controllers, was the fact that it came with 60 games, which was a big jump over previous versions. Now, for the Atari Flashback 4, there are three major improvements over the Flashback 3. First, the emulation quality, while still not perfect, has been improved. Second, it now comes with wireless controllers that feature an extra menu button. Third, certain licensing issues have been overcome and 15 additional games have been added, including some of the most requested, like Space Invaders, Asteroids, and Jungle Hunt, which brings the total built-in games to a generous 75. Let's take a look at what comes in the box. A high-quality Asteroids poster, an AtGames catalog, which gives you a link to download the original game manuals and promotes an iOS collection, the tiny console itself with built-in composite audio video cable, mono of course, two wireless infrared controllers, one for player 1 with most of the controls from the console mimicked, and the other just a straight up player 2 controller. Let's get right down to how the system works. Like I said, the emulation quality has been improved with faster performance and smoother sound. It's still nowhere near perfect, so purists should look elsewhere. For everyone else though, the games are fun as is, and the improved game lineup and excellent controllers are an added incentive. The game selection is fairly strong, heavily favoring Atari originals. There are also a few prototypes, Coleco, M-Network, and Tiger Vision releases in there as well. Sadly, there are no Activision or eMagic titles, but as we know, it all comes down to licensing. Any way you break it down though, 75 games is still a tremendous value. The included controllers, of course, require line of sight with the console's infrared sensor to work. I noticed no lag from their use, and it's frankly kind of nice having such light Atari-style wireless controllers, even if they do only work with this system. Naturally, all your classic controllers should work without a hitch as well. I've certainly run into no issues. As mentioned, AtGames themselves provide separately available wired controllers with their excellent improvements to the joystick, and also, surprisingly, a top-notch paddle controller recreation. Simply plug the paddles in to play your favorite included paddle games the way they were meant to be played. This is something that can't be stressed enough. Paddle games need a paddle controller. Again, these wired controllers also work great on your existing classic hardware, so mix and match as your mood strikes. It's great to have a modern option for classic systems too, for those of us who have them. Speaking of mixing and matching, this flexibility can also create new multiplayer experiences for single-player games on the console. For instance, one person can use player 1's wireless controller while another can have a wired joystick plugged into port 1. One person can then control the movement while the other controls the action button. Obviously, not all games can benefit from this setup, since you sometimes need the type of coordinated control that's not really possible with two players doing their own thing, but some games can of course be a lot more fun this way, so that's just another dimension. This could also of course turn two-player games into four-player games. So anyway, the Atari Flashback 4 should be available at major retailers everywhere here in the US later in the year, and will surely be part of holiday promotions, whether it's Black Friday or anything around that. So keep an eye out for it. I highly recommend this system for all but the strictest purist. Again, it's a great value. So I welcome your comments, feedback, and questions, so send them my way. And until next time, this was Bill Loguidice for Armchair Arcade.